Salve, here's part 2 of the week 3 presentation and lesson. And in this part, we're going to go over the third IO, fourth conjugation, revert the first 2 conjugations, and then talk about why they're important. We're going to learn about joined vowels. It's probably one of my least favorite parts about teaching Latin. So all I'm going to say here is just hang tight, absorb the information. You'll be able to use this stuff on quizzes, etc. So it's important to me that you understand how to use it and like why it's important. So, right. So we'll move on past this as soon as we are able. So third IO, fourth conjugation verbs. Let's start by looking back at what we learned last week about the first and second conjugations. So conjugations are, like I said last week, are similar to declensions for nouns, only they apply to verbs. The number of a conjugation just tells you which family of verbs a verb belongs to, depending on the endings of its first 2 principal parts. Remember that when you see a dictionary entry or a vocab list entry of a verb, you'll be given 3 or 4 principal parts of it. We're looking at the first 2, and that tells us which conjugation the verb belongs to. Here we have our examples of the first and second conjugation. I got 3 different verbs right here. In the first conjugation, you can identify the first conjugation because it's infinitive. Ending ends with ARE. The letter A is really the key there. All infinitives, no, not all infinitives, but all regular infinitives end with an RE. It's the letter before that gives you a hint as to what it is. And then we also talked about second conjugation verbs in which the first principal part ends with EO, second part ends with ERE. In this case, for the second conjugation, it's important to recognize that EO of the first principal part, because as you're about to see, different conjugations have ERE as their infinitive ending. So the difference actually comes in how the first principal part ends, which in this case is EO. So let's look at the third IO, and fourth. Third and third IO, why are they different? Well, third conjugation, as you can see, first principal part ends with O, second principal part ends with ERE. That is the telltale sign of a third conjugation verb. And then you have, I'm going to skip third IO real quick. Then you have the fourth conjugation over here, and you'll see that most of them end with IO, but the real key here is IRE. Fourth conjugation only is the only one that has IRE as its infinitive. So first and fourth are easy to spot because all you need to do is look at the second one. If it's ARE, you know it's first. If it's IRE, you know it's fourth. But when the second one is ERE, you're going to be looking at the first principal part as well. In the middle here, we have the third IO conjugation. And third IO is kind of funky. It's kind of like the third and fourth conjugation had a baby. You'll notice the first principal part ends with IO, facio, capio, rapio. And the second principal part ends with ERE, facere, capere, rapere, rapere. So that's how you identify them. Third is OERE. Third IO is IO, ERE, hence the name IO. And fourth is IO, IRE. Right. So that's how for second, third, and third IO, you got to look at the first 2 principal parts. For fourth and first, you only have to look at the second principal part to tell you which conjugation it is, which is all really interesting, but why is it important? Well, this is the part that I don't generally enjoy. It's very like down in the weeds grammar stuff and very like small details. Just going over this so people are aware of it. This is not something I'm going to test y'all extensively on, but I do need to know that you got this information. So one reason that conjugations are important is that verbs are formed slightly differently based on their conjugation. The endings are the same. OST must sent, bombas bot, bamus batis bont, isti it. The endings don't change based off the conjugation. It's little weird stuff that happens in the middle of the verb. It actually determines what their joined vowel is going to be. And that's probably the first time my students, the ones who had me last year, heard that. I intentionally stay away from this stuff. I feel it's too confusing. But y'all are big kids now. You're in Latin too. We can learn about this. So the joined vowel is a vowel, a letter that joins the verb stem. Remember, the stem is the first part of the word, the root of the word that you can add other endings onto. So the joined vowel is the vowel that sits between the verb stem and its ending, like personal ending, ost, must, so on and so forth. And the joined vowel is a thing, its own special thing in the present and imperfect tense. All the other tenses, we can just follow a formula and we don't have to worry too much about it. But for these, we do. So this really isn't a huge deal. It's not all that out of left field until you start messing with verbs that are third or third IO conjugation. So here's the examples we're going to roll with. Debeo, debere for second, EO, ERE. Peto, petere for third, EO, ERE. And then capio, capere, third IO, which is third IO because it has IO, ERE. Now let's look at conjugating different verbs. And when I say conjugate, I mean like we're going to add some endings on. We're going to form some verbs. And I'm going to show you how why knowing a conjugation is important to alleviate some confusion. So we're going to talk about the present tense first. Things change a little bit in the imperfect tense. And like I said, in all the other tenses, it's not an issue. So join vowels in the present tense. For the first and second conjugation, you can form a verb easily by just taking the second principal part and then removing the RE from the second principal part before you add the ending. That's because the joined vowels for the first conjugation is A and second conjugation is E, and that just adds up with the infinitive ending minus the RE. So the stem of amare will be ama, and we're going to add other endings onto that. So for example, we're going to take amare, remove the RE, that leaves us with ama, and if I want to say he loves, I'll just put the T on the end because T is the personal ending for third singular ending, meaning he, she, or it. Second conjugation, debere, take off the RE, you're left with debe, and then you slap a T on it, and that means he owes. Now you'll notice over here the third IO, and fourth conjugation are left blank. So let's talk about that. All right. Third IO, and fourth conjugations, their joined vowel is going to be I. So the stem is formed by removing the ERE or the IRE from the second principal part and then replacing it with an I before adding the appropriate ending. So you'll see here, if we do these next, especially third and third IO, if we do these like we did with the first and second by taking the second principal part and just taking off the RE, you'll notice here you're left with pete. Well, that's not going to be right. And there were times last year where where some of y'all would ask me, and the kids who I had, well, why does this have an I now? Well, this is why, because it's third conjugation and the joined vowel is going to be I. So we take off the ERE here, we add an I, and that's our stem. Capio, capere, take off the ERE, add an I. Dormio, dormire, take off the IRE and add an I. Or for the fourth, in this case, you can just do RE. Take off the RE, but you'll see why in a second that I'm including this here. So let's go ahead and add our personal endings. So we're going to add T's onto these to make the subject he. So petit is he attacks, capit, he takes, and dormit, he sleeps. So that would be confusing enough on its own, but wait, that's not all. Let's see what happens when we make it plural. And the subject is they. So you'll notice down here, look how petit, he attacks, when it becomes third plural, turns into petunt. The U is the joined vowel for the third person plural only in the third conjugation. So that's cool. Third IO and fourth, you'll notice capit and dormit turn into capiunt and dormiunt, respectively. That's because in the third IO and fourth, the joined vowel becomes IU in the third person plural. Everything else, the joined vowel is going to be I. Except for the third plural. So that's why knowing conjugations are important. So take a second. If you need to copy this down just to have a cheat sheet, that's fine. You also have a copy of this presentation available in the video description. So that's the present tense. Let's talk about the imperfect tense real quick. So in the imperfect tense, once again, we really don't have to worry about the first, second, or third conjugation. We just look at the second principal part, remove the RE, slap our imperfect endings on, and we're good to go. Ama, debe, pete is the stem. We're going to add the ending bot on to make it he was blanking. So ama bot, he was loving. Debe bot, he was owing. Pete bot, he was attacking. And then down here, we make it plural. Amabant, they were loving. Debebant, they were owing. Petabant, they were attacking. So that's pretty straightforward. For the third IO and fourth conjugation, though, that join vowel turns into an IE. So instead of it being copybot or copebot, it turns into copiabot. Or so the stem is copie and dormie. So we take that second principal part, capere, remove the ERE, add IE, then add the endings. Dormio, dormire, we remove the ire, replace it with an IE. Dormiebat, he was sleeping. Dormiebant, they were sleeping. And that's how the join vowels work. So, like I said, this is something I want you to be aware of. I do not want you to stress about it. In all the other tenses, you do not have to worry about special join vowels. You don't have to think about it. You just mindlessly follow the formula of the third principal part minus I, and you're good to go. Yay! All right. So, join vowels are a lot of information in detail concerning a relatively minor aspect of Latin, in my opinion. If you aspire to make it to AP Latin, this is something you'll want to commit to memory. And if not, I only expect you to be generally familiar with this information and be able to form it with the help of your resources. Join vowels are important, but they are not worth stressing over. So, if I can't make that clear enough, it's good to know you don't have to live or die by it. Okay, so on this slide here, there is a link to a chart of all active verb endings. It actually is all the verb endings, not just active, but passive, and you haven't learned that yet, so don't worry about it. So let's open it up, see what it looks like. I can kind of walk you through it. This will be good for you to have. Keep it bookmarked, print it out if you got a printer. If you want me to make copies to send to your school, I can do that. Just let me know on It's Learning. We're only going to worry about this first page. There's 4 pages to this thing. Don't worry about the other ones. Those can't hurt you. Looking at the first one, we're looking at active voice verbs. Active voice just means the subject is doing the action, like he runs or he punches, as opposed to passive, which is like he was being punched or he is being punched, where the subject is receiving the action. Not worrying about that yet. Up here in the top the top corners, you have just a key to help you keep straight the endings for the conjugations. O-A-R-E, E-O-E-R-E, O-E-R-E, I-O-E-R-E, I-O-I-R-E. First, second, third I-O, fourth. And over here, you have your join vowels that you can add on. I have them organized here for present tense right here, imperfect tense over here, and here's the conjugation it belongs to. I also make a note down here for IU and I and IU that the one with the asterisk next to it only applies to the third person plural in the present tense, nothing else. Okay, so over here you have your present tense endings. Up here you'll see how the stem is formed, telling you to take the second principal part, chop off the A-R-E, E-R-E, or I-R-E, and then add the appropriate join vowel based off the conjugation, and then you can add your ending, O-S-T, mostis, or unt. Over here I have the first, just a reminder that the first person singular will be I, and then next to it you'll see we, that's the first person plural. You is second person singular, y'all is second person plural, and T is third person singular, and T is third person plural. And then that's for the present tense. Each different box is a different tense. You'll have the stem and the translation for it up here. We will cover the future tenses next week or in 2 weeks. But based off what you've learned by looking at this, you should be able to figure it out. You can figure it out. I'm not saying you should be able to, but you could. You just treat it like the others and just follow these rules that are laid out up here on how to form it and translate it. The perfect tenses are all down here. Perfect, pluperfect, future perfect. You'll see the stem is all the same. You take the third principal part of a verb, you chop off the I. Down here's how they're translated. Here you got your endings, e, isti, it, emus, istis, erunt. The pluperfect endings, eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratis, erant. And the future perfect endings, ero, eris, erit, erimus, eritis, erint. So this will be useful to have around. So moving on. So going back to this checklist, this is everything we covered. I would ask you to just stop for a second and look at each of these boxes and ask yourself, can I do that? And if you can't, I would say go back and try and rewatch that part of the video. If you're still confused, I have a link here to the original slide with other videos by a better teacher than me named Magister Johnson, who runs the Latin tutorial channel. These videos are very well made and very straightforward. If you haven't checked them out yet, I highly suggest you do. You could teach yourself all of Latin just by being on YouTube, watching this dude. So please use those if you're confused. Also, let me know if there's any way I can help you. And time.